Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm from 10 Minute Momentum. And today I'm going to talk about how to homeschool high school, right? How to homeschool for those 4 years to get your kid all the way across the finish line to graduation. And obviously, there's a lot of information to be covered in just a few minutes. So this is going to cover the high points. It's not going to go in depth. It's just going to cover the overarching information you need to know specifically for that 4 year period of time. So I'm going to cover three different things: how to make a 4 year plan, um, the importance of a transcript specifically, and how to help students be motivated to learn, right? That's a lot for one short video, but we're going to cover this as quickly as possible. So, how do you make a 4 year plan, right? You're looking at high school and you're thinking, how do I even do this, right? You've already notified your school district. They know you're homeschooling, you know you're homeschooling, but you have a blank piece of paper in front of you and you're 4 years from graduation and you don't know what to do. Okay, so the number one thing you need to do is go look at your state's graduation requirements because they really do vary in all 50 states. You want to look at your state Board of Education's requirements, and in some states, there aren't any. Like when you decide that your child is ready to graduate, that's it. In other states, they have specific courses that are required. So each state is different. And if your state is one that doesn't have specific requirements and you're trying to figure out, like, oh, what's my minimum that I need to do for my kids, you can go look at the requirements, well, from other states, or you can look at the requirements for public school students to graduate, or you can look at the requirements for local universities to see what they're requiring from students if you expect that your student will go to college. All right, so after you know the state requirements, then you have to look at those requirements and figure out what courses you're going to have your student take. Now, often it's somewhere in the realm of like 22 to 24 credits. So, 6 credits a year or something like that, that your student's going to need to figure out to graduate in 4 years. Now, incidentally, it is totally fine for students to take some of those early. Like it's very common for students to take Spanish 1 in 7th or 8th grade. You can put that on your high school plan. Or oftentimes Algebra 1 is taken in 7th or 8th grade, depending on the student. Again, that's a high school level course that will count towards their credit. So you may not actually need 6 credits a year when they're in high school if they've done a little bit of this work early. All right, now, after you have decided just what courses they're going to take, like how are you going to get 24 credits or whatever, what classes do they need to take, then you're going to write up your 4 year plan. Here's where you're going to map it out. And I'm going to link to a blog post where I have this all written up because sometimes that's easier to see it. And in there, I have a sample 4 year plan. But for example, a freshman year, you might say, okay, I need an English course. I need Algebra 1. I want physical science, maybe piano for your fine arts credit, American history. Maybe your child plays soccer, so that's going to count for PE. And maybe you're going to have them do a speech class and Bible, right? Though that is not set in stone. Like that is 7 credits, right? That's a heavy schedule, so you wouldn't have to do that much. I have all this linked in the blog post, but and then your sophomore year, you map this out. Again, this is just on paper an idea of what you might decide to do in the future. This can always change, right? That's the freedom to change. Is always hold on to that, because once you get started, you may find like, oh, wow, I gave my kid too many credits this year. Freshman year, we're going to not do Spanish 1 this year. We're going to wait and we'll do it next year or something like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is you've made your 4 year plan. You've kind of penciled in when you think they're going to take these classes you know they need to graduate or that you have chosen for them to do before they graduate. And it's good to know at this point, or go research, what are your options? Okay. Because just because you want your child to do this coursework doesn't mean you, as the mom, need to teach it all to them. I, for one, could not teach my child algebra. Like, I can do algebra and I can figure it out myself, but I am terrible at teaching math. And even if I could pull off algebra 1, I am definitely not going to be able to pull off geometry, algebra 2, upper level sciences. Cannot do it. It just was never my thing. So it was important to me for my kids to look at, well, how else am I going to help them learn this stuff? What can I do? So here are some options that you should know about that can be the way you plug in, things you plug into to help cover those credits. So maybe your child does some early college where they get dual credit for college and high school. Maybe you have homeschool co-ops or hybrid options, obviously textbooks, work experience. Some classes can be covered through work experience. Career centers, there's a lot of them in our area, and your kids can take really interesting classes there. Through volunteering, you could cover some of your, elective type courses or possibly sciences through volunteering. Project-based learning. So here, you're not using a textbook, but your child is doing a project. I could think of like building a computer or something like that. Lots of projects that you could give them credit for their classes or electives. Also hobbies. If your child has hobbies that they like do all the time, they spend so much time on this, that would also be something that could be possibly counted as credits. And obviously, like athletics as well. Some students do a lot of athletics, and that can count as PE, but also if they're doing a lot of extra training or studying or learning, you could count it as like some other nuance of athletic science, something like that, depending on other resources that you're pairing with it. All right, so you know your options now. You got your plan, right? Penciled in, you know your options, and it's okay to like pencil those into like, maybe by the time they're a junior or senior, we'll do a college class. We'll do this English as a college class, or my son did a lot of classes, science classes at our local science center. So I always penciled that in, right? Another son did some stuff at a career center. So you can pencil that in if you know, but even if you don't know, you can have that in the back of your mind as like, okay, here are some things if I run into a situation, or if my child wants to go maybe have somebody instruct them that has a little more knowledge than me, we have some options. All right, then next, you need to start making a homeschool transcript. Now, as I mentioned before, this transcript can actually include some classes from 7th and 8th grade. It doesn't actually have to only be high school. It should be high school level work, but it can be done in those earlier years. So you may have a few credits done early. Now, I have a link to a transcript template in the blog post that I'm going to link with this video. So you can look there for a template that you can copy, and it has a few classes filled in so that you can see how you would do this. It has a place for the name of the course, the date, their first semester grade, their second semester grade, their final grade, right? And it is set up that way as first semester, second semester, final grade for a reason. I'll talk about that in a minute when I go into transcripts a little bit more. And you will also want to start writing course descriptions, because when you have a 4-year transcript, when it's all done and you go to hand it to a university as a homeschooler, they're going to ask you for course descriptions, and they're going to want to know, what resources did you use to teach your child Algebra 1? What resources or projects or books did they use to learn physical science? What literature did you read for your English class? Things like that. You can include all of that in your course descriptions. I have a course description template also linked with the template for transcripts. So you can get all of that there. And it even has a couple sample course descriptions for you to see. Again, this is so much easier if you start this when you're not a senior, when your child is, you know, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. It doesn't take that long to do, but it's one of those things that can feel overwhelming because we think it's going to be a really big deal. And obviously, after you've done it once for your first child, a lot of it is copy and paste. At least it was for me. All right. The important thing to know when you make this 4-year plan is that this doesn't have to be stressful, right? If you know, like, I have all these things to do, you just work on it a little bit at a time. It's not like, oh, I need to take a Saturday afternoon or I need a whole week to make my kids plan. No, when you have an idea, you just slowly start to work on it. It doesn't have to be something stressful. Now, I'm not going to cover here like applying for colleges, probably do that in a different video, but once you have your 4-year plan, it makes it so much easier to just work the plan, take the steps that you need to do to put that into motion. And obviously, it's worth revisiting it every year and adjusting things as needed. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to briefly talk about transcripts because transcripts obviously become kind of this final document, that really is, combining all your learning experience into a 1-page document. It feels very heavy and important, but it's not really that. It doesn't need to be that stressful when you understand that the whole purpose of a transcript is simply to create a 1-page record of your institution's learning, right? What your child learned at your homeschool, to show it to another institution, whether that's a college, a career center, and maybe that's not even for right now, right? You could be creating this transcript. Your kid has no interest in going to college, and it may not be used for years and years, but it's much easier to create it now than to try recreate it in the future. Now, when you create your transcript, I will tell you, you can be as creative in naming your classes as you want, but it's often much better if you just stick to simple names, because colleges, universities, they got lots of information coming in, and you could either use something simple like English 1, pretty, nondescript, and just describe it in your course description, or you could use something that they're familiar with, like American literature or British literature, or any of the other kind of literatures that they might be familiar with. But choosing to put together a really creative, long, unfamiliar description is not going to necessarily speed things along, because they're going to ask a lot more questions, at least in my experience. All right. So when you want to make this transcript, you can use several different methods to do that. You can use their textbooks. You can look at literature that you've used, field trips. I mean, I would be writing all of this down, right? Make a bunch of sticky notes where you're like trying to remember, what did we do this year? We did some field trips. We did a class here. We went to co-op. Maybe a kid did some volunteer work, and you combine those different experiences into courses, right? Some of them are straightforward, like I did an Algebra 2 textbook. Okay, you did an Algebra 2. But some things might be a combination of volunteer work, some project-based learning, some books they read. It could be like a whole combination. And you put that all together into a class that is very unique to their specific interests. So you write down all the courses your child has taken, and then you are going to assign credit, right? Now, when I did this, some of the stuff my kids had taken, I had assigned grades to, or maybe they had gotten grades in co-op classes, and some of them I was like, I don't know. Did you know it's actually okay when you give your kids grade to assign mommy grades? I love Lee Binns. She teaches a lot on writing transcripts, and she talks about mommy grades a lot. And, I found that when I gave mommy grades, when I just like looked at the work my kid did, I looked at my kid, I looked at the work they did, and I said, did they do their best here? Were they like working hard? That's an A, right? But when your kid is like slacking, they're capable of so much more. Not that they're like, some kids could work really, really hard and maybe it looks like a C on paper, but they were going all in, right? They were working so hard and they put in way more effort than they needed to. It's okay for you to adjust the grade, for you to give the grade that accounts for their effort, right? Lee Benz teaches a lot on this and does a really great job. So you might find that, oh, that child works so hard. That's actually an A. This other kid, they didn't work so hard. Maybe they didn't get a great grade, but they didn't work hard. Yeah, that's definitely a C. Okay. So it becomes up to you. So you give grades for each of these classes. And then after you've put grades in for first semester, second semester, and final, you are going to enter in a lot of personal information. Now, let me back up. I said I was going to talk about that first semester, second semester, final grade. When I first made my kids' transcripts, I just said like Algebra 1, A, and then Algebra 2, A, Algebra or Geometry, B plus, whatever. I just gave it one grade. But here's what I found. A couple of the universities that my kids went to said, hey, we need that in a different format. We want it to say semester 1, semester 2, final grade. And one of my kids was homeschooled and then went to a private school, and they asked for the same thing. So the template that I have linked has the grades listed as semester 1, semester 2, and final. Now, if you have a child that just did a class that was like half a credit, you can just pick one semester. Like semester 1's when they took it, you don't put anything in semester 2. And then the final grade is just what you did in semester 1. All right. So the last thing you're going to do after filling out everything in that template transcript, the last thing you'll do is sign it. But right before that, you're going to use a GPA calculator, right? And I don't think I'm actually going to explain how to do this. I have a GPA calculator linked in the blog post on writing a transcript. And I think it's going to be better for you to use that calculator and read that description than for me to try and explain it here without visuals. But you need to calculate your child's GPA because that needs to go on there. You also need to put on your transcript how many classes are in progress. So you're going to have classes on your transcript that are finalized, and then you're going to also have ones that are in progress. Like once the school year starts, you can put them on there. Maybe you don't even have any grades for them yet. You would just put, instead of a grade, you would just put in progress. So when you calculate your child's GPA, that's based on final grades. And then you can also say how many credits are in progress. All right. So again, creating a transcript is really important because it is a record, right? So it doesn't have to be stressful if you understand that you as the parent are the best one to show other people what your child learned, right? You, more than anybody else, is qualified to show another institution what they learned. You know what they did at home. Even if your child took co-op classes, this is the way I looked at it. Even if my kid took co-op classes, they were only there 1 day a week. I can see what they were doing the other 4 days a week. So in writing that transcript, you take all that information, that full picture of your child, and you're just putting it in to a format that an institution can understand, right? Now, the last thing I'm going to briefly talk about, because I really found that this is really important, is how to motivate your kids to learn. And I have a whole post written on this, but for high school kids especially, I found that it came down to just a couple of things. First of all, it had to be something that they felt like was relevant. right? If your child doesn't feel like what you're forcing them to learn is relevant, it's a lot harder to maintain motivation, especially for some kids. Some kids are natural academics, they enjoy book learning, but some kids really don't. They need to understand the relevance. Don't shortcut that learning process. Like if they need to understand the relevance, help them gain some real world understanding of how, math is relevant to them. All right. So make it relevant, help them be organized. All right. Organization can be really challenging for some students. That can mean planners. Some kids don't like planners, but then there's digital planners, right? Some kids are really visual. They need a checklist of things. Some kids are very auditory and they might need to be reminded. I know that drives me crazy personally because I don't want to be reminding everyone, but some kids need that reminder. So once you've kind of tuned in to what keeps your kid organized, it's 4 years. Like you're helping them complete their high school and use their strengths to get it done, right? So, and then I would say, as much as possible at this age, connect their learning to real life, right? This kind of goes to the relevancy thing, but the goal of high school and completing this education is to prepare them for what's next, whether that's college or work or some other kind of education. Whatever is next is what you're trying to prepare them for. So making that education connect to real life right now as much as possible is going to help them understand why they're doing what they're doing right now. So I've found that like putting them in situations with other people where they have to learn from other people is helpful, right? Sometimes that was putting them in classes with other peers who love the same thing. I always put my son in science classes with teachers who love science and students who love science because he loves science so much, and probably he wouldn't love it that much if he was spending all his sciencey time with me because I just don't understand it that well. So he has come alive when he's with students who all enjoy that subject as much as him. So putting them around in peer situations, work situations, volunteer situations where they are putting their education into use, where they're learning that it's relevant, it makes it much more important and valuable. And in the process of doing things with people in those high school years, I have found that they build these relationships unexpectedly, and they learn so much from the people they're relating to. So anyway, those are just a few of the tips to motivate them. As I've said, I've written up a whole long thing on it that I will link below. Anyway, this is just kind of a brief overview on homeschooling high school. I think it can be something that is very daunting. It's a time period when a lot of families consider putting their kids in school or making a big shift because they don't feel confident that as a parent, they have the education or the know-how to get their kid all the way through to the finish line. And I just want to assure you that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that daunting. And that you as their parent are completely capable of helping them cross the finish line, get everything done that they need to do, and do it well, right? In a way that they feel good about it and that you feel good about it too. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next time.